On today's show, two teams that are vying for the wild card face off this weekend, featuring plenty of stars. And I'm with my man, Stephen Offenbaker of Locked On Reds to break it all down, pitching matchups, players to keep an eye on, and whether or not both teams are going to be buyers or sellers over the next month. So yeah, big show. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast and Locked On Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Friday, June 27th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes the most, Javier Reyes, and I've been covering this team for almost 6 years now, not just for this podcast, but also various other outlets, including justbaseball.com, chief among them. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. But I said it before, it's not just Locked On Padres today. It is also Locked On Reds, and I'm being joined by one of the hosts, Stephen Offenbaker. My man, how are you doing today?
What is up? I am excited to talk a little baseball. This is going to be a fun series, Javi. I'm ready for this one. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Me too. It's always fun. You know what I mean? It's always fun between these two teams because there's always like a lot of offense, and I just enjoy just a lot of the big time players, a lot of the key players of both of these teams, particularly the Reds. And you guys have had like a couple of former Padres on your team and some beloved Padres. You've had Will Myers before. It didn't exactly work out. He kind of washed up there. Then you have Nick Martinez currently, who we'll talk about in a second. And you had Tommy Pham, who hit a home run, I believe, to like the fourth deck. I'm making that up, but like he hit it far. In like I believe it was like 22. I'm gonna say it was, and I will never forget that he hit like 2 home runs that series. Hated the Padres, I guess, for his stint there, but man, guys, we're gonna
Tommy Pham also slapped a guy in the face over a fantasy baseball league or a fantasy football league. So
yeah, Tommy Pham, quite the character, as it turns out. Yeah, absolutely.
He had good times in Cincinnati, man. He had good times in Cincinnati.
Yes, he did. We're gonna get to all that, guys, including pitching matchups, and that's where we're gonna start. Before we get into more of the in-depth stuff, let's start with the first game. Nick Martinez versus Dylan Cease for Friday night's game. Let's do it, man. What can you tell us about Nick Martinez? Padres fans are familiar, but how has he been over the course of not just this year, but I guess just general Reds tenure?
Yeah, so he's in a weird spot right now, actually. You guys are catching him at a really unusual time. Last year, in August and September, he pitched the pitching of his life, which he managed to parlay into a qualifying offer in the offseason, which he accepted because he's no dummy. So he's getting paid $21 million this year as a bona fide starting pitcher for the Cincinnati Reds. Now, he's had a few bad outings, and his last start, he absolutely got shell-shocked. On June 19th, he went out against the Minnesota Twins, managed 2 2/3 innings, allowed 7 runs on 7 hits, with 3 of those hits being home runs. He got pasted. After that start, he made not 1, but 2 relief appearances because the Reds bullpen was just absolutely gassed, absolutely blown out. So he came out and pitched on against the St. Louis Cardinals on June 21st, 2 innings of zeros. Great work of relief pitching. Then he came back out again on the 23rd and pitched another inning where he struck out a dude, didn't allow any runs. So for me, the question is, how is he going to look being back on the mound? How is he going to look as a starter? Is he going to have any extra effects from having pitched twice in between starts? And the Reds are saying, oh, well, he pitched those relief innings when he would be due to do sides, when he would be due to do the in-between work anyway. So it's going to be okay. So I'm watching to see if he fatigues early, if his routine being changed alters him in any way. Now would be a great time against the Padres, against a former team, for him to go back to be that dude from last August and September that was one of the best pitchers in the league. The Reds really need that from him right now.
Yeah, I get that. And look, it's interesting to see where he's come, right? Because this is a guy that was, I've called him like a Swiss Army knife type pitcher, where like they use him as a closer a tiny bit with the Padres. They use him as a long inning reliever. They use him as a starter, a piggyback starter. The second part of piggyback, they kind of just use him in every role, high leverage, low leverage. And I just looked up numbers like, yeah, he really did pitch his butt off at the end of last year. But yeah, some troubling concerns, lower strikeout rate this year, higher walk rate, second year in a row where his strikeout rate has gone down, but seems just like he's a fine player. but I'm really curious to see how he does against Dylan Cease, who is supposed to be a lot better than what we've seen so far this year. 4.43 ERA in the year. Look, there's some crazy stats on him, but basically it just seems like he's having a little bit of a year from hell. Like he's just not, all the hits are coming at the worst times. The swing and miss is still there. The strikeouts are still there. Yes, he gives up runs, but that's always been what he's been. He's a guy that's going to give you nearly 200 innings, have a nearly 30% strikeout rate. And some years the ERA will be a little bit bloated because of the hard hit stuff. But this year, it's like it always comes at the worst time. So hopefully, against a skilled, let's call it, Reds offense with a lot of stars in it, don't get me wrong, that he can just get a good start, because there has been no consistency for Dylan Cease at all this year. And in Great American Ballpark, might not get any easier. So we're going to have to see.
He might have something working in his favor, though, Javi, and that is that collectively, the Reds are a very young team for the most part. And a lot of these guys don't really have very much experience against Dylan Cease at all. Very few at bats, very few sample size body of work. So I think the first couple at bats, the first couple times through, they're going to just be trying to figure him out. Now, they are young and they're scrappy, so that might not mean anything, but it might work to Dylan's advantage, the fact that these kids have never seen his stuff.
I hope it does. I really do, because Dylan Cease has been just this guy that the Padres, you feel so good. Talked about this on yesterday's show. Everybody go check that out with Jake Ariani of CBS Sports. Talked about this yesterday, that like the Nick Pivetta signing has been so huge for this Padres team. And he was a guy that's like the 4 starter, right? Like this is a guy that you just need him to be okay and fill out innings. And he's been much better than that. And then you're like, yeah, if you told Padres fans that before the year, you'd be like, great. We've got King, Darvish will come back. You just got to fill out the bullpen, will be great. And then it's like, oh, but Dylan Cease is kind of a mess. So we're going to have to see how that plays this weekend. I hope you're right, but I really do think it's one of those things where he's given up leads. That's another thing. Gives up a lot of leads. Going to talk about that next week, by the way, for all Locked On Padres listeners, that he's been remarkably unclutched this year, it's actually kind of disturbing. But look forward to that next week, guys.
I'll tell you this, Javi. As much as Nick Martinez might be a struggle in game 1, you guys are in for it in game 2 of this series, because we got Andrew Abbott going. And this is a guy that has very quickly risen in the Reds rotation to kind of qualify for almost A status. Everybody talks about Hunter Green. There was a lot of expectations with Nick Lodolo, who you guys get in game 3 of this series. But Andrew Abbott this year is 7-1. He has 2.9 in WAR. ERA currently sitting at a cool crisp 1.79, and he is just mowing dudes down. His strikeouts per 9 right now is 8.6, walks per 9 at 2.4. He has a legitimate case to be in the All-Star game this year. When everybody was talking about Hunter Green and everybody was talking about Nick Lodolo, Abbott's just gone out there and been the man for this team in this rotation, a model of reliability and consistency where this team needed it the most.
Absolutely. Speaking of consistency, we're going to talk to you guys about the Padres pitcher that's going to be facing him in that game on Saturday, that I can't wait to talk about, because he's a silly goose in a lot of ways. And we'll be there in just a sec, guys, because we got to take a break to talk about one of our sponsors. And that sponsor for today's show, you heard it at the top of the pod. It is Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends or family? Maybe it's game day. You suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. Happy hour ran short. Maybe there wasn't a happy hour at all. Maybe you had one and that made you want to go to the game. Whatever it is, that's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save from tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes all the possibilities appear. It's great. And they make buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. It's the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game, like, say, Padres Reds perhaps this weekend. Can't wait for that. You want to have a lot of offense? You might get it because it's the Reds, and there's a lot of stars on both teams. It's going to be great. So go check that out, guys. Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed with Game Time. And just like that, folks, we are back here on Locked On Padres, thriving and vibing. Mr. Stephen Offenbaker is joining me of Locked On Reds fame. We just talked about the game 2 of the series, featuring Andrew Abbott, who I agree with you, has been a very underrated piece. This always happens, by the way. Not always, but feels like it's a thing that happens pretty constantly where you've got the stars in the rotation and all of a sudden, it's the third guy is the star. The Padres have this to an extent a couple years ago, right? They had, guys like Seth Lugo show out. This just is, it's the funny thing about baseball is why you have to play the games. You never know what's going to happen. But I will say, Andrew Abbott, not the greatest ground ball rate in the world, 30.2%. Maybe he is due for at least a little bit of regression. And that's not even a shot because the guy has a 1.7 ERA. So maybe Padres fans, this will be the weekend that you rough him up a little bit. But the bigger thing that I also have to mention is Randy Vasquez, who's kind of the opposite of Andrew Abbott, where if I'm going to do a passive aggressive comment about maybe Abbott getting a little bit lucky, Randy Vasquez has been the king of luck because this guy walks more batters than he strikes them out. He doesn't put the ball on the ground. He is the devil magic Kansas City Chiefs of 2024 among starting pitchers. I don't know how long it'll last. I personally think he's better suited to elongating role. But until it happens consistently that he's getting lit up, he's going to keep being a starter. And I'm really curious to see it, especially in Great American Ballpark, whether it holds up. This game, dare I say, the one that I'm the most excited for this weekend. I don't know why. I just got a feeling we might see some fireworks. It might be really fun on both sides, right? And because I said that, now we'll get a pitcher's duel. And then last game of the series is Mr. Stephen Kolek of the Kolek Kingdom. We love you. Versus Nick Lodolo, who we were talking about before. A guy that I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on because I've heard a lot of prospect talk over the years. He has shown so much talent, so much strikeout potential. Hasn't always been there. So what can you tell me about Nick Lodolo?
So Nick Lodolo is a big hype guy. And you look at his numbers and outside of a start on June 11th, he's been pretty good. He gives you 6 innings. He, a couple earned runs along the way, strikes some guys out. Here's what happened with Nick Lodolo. He had one of the nastiest back foot breakers you were ever going to see up until last year. Then he developed a blister on his pitching hand that continued to reoccur based on how he gripped the ball. They have worked with him trying to change his grip, trying to prevent those blisters. And now the back foot breaker is not as nasty as it used to be. So he's learning new pitches with new grips and kind of reinventing a little bit of what he is doing. And at times that guy is really, really good. And at times he's not. It's a Jekyll and Hyde situation. I'm not sure which Nick we're going to get. He's been a little bit better as of late. So I'm interested to see if he gives us 5 innings and can hold you guys to a couple of runs. I'll consider that a success against what's a really potent San Diego lineup.
I think that it's fascinating. If you just look at Lodolo, yes, the strikeout rate has gone down basically for the last 3 years, right? Like that's not great for a guy who was pinned to be this great, super high quality prospect, but at least the walk rate is down this year. So I agree with you. He's giving a little bit of like Aaron Nola of the Philadelphia Phillies vibes where it's like, he might be one of those guys that becomes underrated because he will just throw you innings, get strikeouts, and have some blow up starts. But I don't think people realize how valuable a guy like Aaron Nola can be. I know he's bad this year, so this is a bad example, but like, that's a guy where it's like, 3.7 ERA, but like, if it's always that every year, that carries a lot of value, especially in this Reds rotation that has some other great pitchers. We didn't get to talk about some other guys that won't be facing the Padres, like Hunter Green, like Brady Singer, like Graham Ashcraft, who has been astounding, by the way. Just amazing to see. Can't wait for the series, man. But let's talk about some under-the-radar guys really quickly. Who are some players that the Padres fans should keep an eye on?
Well, obviously everybody's answer when you talk about the Cincinnati Reds is Elly De La Cruz. He's not under anybody's radar. He's the best player on the team. He is 2.7 in WAR this season. He's doing amazing things. Here's some guys to keep an eye on. Number 1, I'm going to give them to you as a group, and that is both of the catchers. Tyler Stephenson and Jose Trevino are playing amazing baseball right now. Jose Trevino is OPS plus of 120. He's starting. He's pushed Tyler Stephenson to the DH role a lot because he's playing so well. Tyler Stephenson is really coming into his own. He's seeing the ball well. He's drawing a lot of walks, and he's starting to hit for a little bit of pop. Watch the catchers group. The other guy to watch is Spencer Steer. He started the season really, really rough. He came into the season with a shoulder injury. He was playing through it. He looked bad. There's no other way to put it. But his numbers are quietly climbing, He's had several multi-hit games recently. He is poised for a big breakout. And when he does that, he's kind of the rejuvenator of the bottom half of the lineup. You stick him down there in the 5-6 hole and kind of let him cook. He's going to do good things.
Yeah, but it's an intriguing lineup. Like, and I'm not just saying that because you're on the show. Like, guys like Matt McLain were really good, and I know that he's been struggling this year, but I look at this, some of the guys, Noelvi Marte, I remember him from the Mariners trade, and he's been doing okay for them. This is not a slouch team, but obviously it's fun to talk about Ellie De La Cruz, who is frankly, when I watch him play, and this is the whole, I know it's so boring, but like, it reminds me so much of what it was like when Tatis was debuting, man, where like, it's such a treat to just, you'll see something you haven't really seen before. The diving catch, I saw that from, I think, a month ago. Diving catch over the middle of the infield. I was like, what the heck is that? The speed, and just this infectious personality, too. Just seems like a guy that just loves to play ball, and it's awesome. So always a treat to see him. Can't wait to see what happens there. And then for the Padres players, just for Reds fans out there, I'd say the under the radar guys would probably be Gavin Sheets, or I'd say Adrian Morejon in terms of the bullpen. Adrian Morejon has been this guy who's been as shut down as possible and hasn't made as many headlines as, say, Jeremiah Estrada, Jason Adam, who you might hear in trade rumors over the coming months potentially. Same thing with Estrada. You've got Robert Suarez, the fireballer who has no emotion whatsoever when he's on the mound, but then he throws 100. Adrian Morejon has been awesome. And then I give a shout to Sheets because this is a guy who sells out for power. You will literally see him try to pull balls that aren't the type of balls that you should be pulling, but that's what he does. Sometimes there'll be strikeouts, sometimes there'll be hits. He has been basically the Padres profar this year, and they got him for nothing. He was a negative WAR player basically every year before this year, and this year 119 WRC plus. He's got 12 home runs. He hits for power, and it's great, but not so great against lefties. So that will be his weakness, and is a weakness of this Padres team.
Speaking of guys that are good against lefties, I want to give you one more dude before we get out of this segment, and that is the Reds leadoff hitter, TJ Friedl. Plays center field for the Reds, left-handed batter. He plays every day, and this season he has currently got a slash line of 287, 372, 426, 8 home runs. He plays every day. He can get you. He'll drop down a bunt. He'll steal the bases. He plays a great defense. He is, it's kind of Ellie light, right? He does all of the things, just not quite as flashy, but he has put together a season that I think deserves for him to be in all-star consideration. He won't break through, I don't think, based on the other things going on in baseball, but he is having a tremendous year, and he's definitely a guy to watch because he sets the tone. He's the leadoff hitter. He gets the most at-bats out of anybody on the team. He's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, huge on base, 372. That's always great for a team like this. A lot of high OPP guys, man. A lot of high OPP guys, so I can't wait to see how this goes. It could be a real slugfest. We'll have to see how it pans out. But I also can't wait to see how it pans out for both of our teams' destiny heading into the trade deadline, which I understand is a month off. But this is the month when you really have to be like, all right, what is it going to take for either of these teams to buy or sell? Steven and I are going to talk about that in just a second. But first, another break for our sponsors. And just like that, we are back here in the final segment of the Locked On Padres, Locked On Reds Friday, Fun Friday crossover extravaganza. Javier Reyes, you can follow me on Twitter /X and Blue Sky at Javapeno, JAVIIPENO. And Stephen Offenbaker, you can find him at Offenbaker on Twitter /X. Let's do it, man. Buy or sell. Because this, I think the Reds, this is an outside perspective. I have found it very funny the years that they decide to buy versus the years that they decide to sell. When they're good, they sell or stand pat. When they are bad, like the year that they trade for Trevor Bauer, I believe, it's just like, wait, what are we doing here? Very odd. But you see this Reds team, it's not impossible. And I think it's really important for everybody to remember every single year in every sport, frankly, but every single year, there's always the second half breakout team. Reds are 42-39 at this point. It is not a terribly crazy division, right? Like, I'm not particularly scared of all these teams on paper. And it's also possible that some of these teams sell, like the Cardinals and Brewers, especially. I think the Cubs are going for it. But how do you feel? What will it take, do you think, for the Reds to become buyers or sellers, whichever one?
So they've been swinging between 4.5 and 6 games out in the division and the division is still very winnable. They are 2.5 games back as we're recording in the wild card race right now. This is a team that could benefit from being a buyer, from going out and getting a couple missing pieces. The problem is the wild card format has taken away a lot of the sellers. So many teams want to hang on to the belief, the claim that they're a buyer, that they're in contention. They want to keep the fans coming to the ballpark. It's a lot harder to get a deal done. And when you can get a deal done, it costs you a lot more than it used to. I think from the Cincinnati Reds standpoint, they should be buyers. They might go out and get a relief pitcher. They might go out and get a piece, maybe a right-handed platoon to pair up with Jake Fraley or Will Benson in the outfield, which is really where they're the weakest, is the outfield. Austin Hayes is oft injured. He's still missing in action somewhere in the minors, I'm told, doing a rehab assignment. Then he's been there since the 80s. It seems like forever. So it's you can't count on that. So for me, I think the Reds might try to add a little bit, but they're going to get some addition from healing. Noelvi Marte will be back. He's starting a rehab assignment. Austin Hayes, maybe someday, will be back. Hunter Green is coming back eventually. You know, these guys coming back are big additions to a team that has remained above 500. Here's the key, Javi. They're getting through the toughest stretch of their schedule that comes to an end 7 days before the All-Star break. The last 7 games before the break, they have the Marlins and the Rockies. If they can enter that stretch at or above 500 and then win 5 of 7, they're cooking with gas. They're in contention. They'll go out and make a move. That's the key for this team to be relevant and go out and spend some money and make a move.
Guys, just with the Rockies, I just love that the NL West is just this danger zone. And then you just got the Rockies somehow just chilling closer to a brewery. That team, a brewery that just happens to have a baseball team at this point. Shout out Colorado and shout out Paul Holden. I love you so much. And I love that fan base. I hope you guys just get real ownership one day. I think that would be great. Yeah, man, the smell test, right? The initial, kind of peripherals here. There is second half breakout written on this team because I do think that there are guys like Matt McClain who can get better. And then if you get all the health back too, and Jose Trevino, kind of a guy that was basically a defensive catcher, which frankly is what you're usually looking for. I mean, you look at his career, and don't get me wrong, I imagine numbers will go down at some point to a degree, but this guy's never been above 100 WRC plus guy. He's never been a guy that's had an above 300 on base, and he's doing that right now. And even if it goes down, he's got really good catching skills. And then they've got Tyler Stephenson. So it's this like really underrated platoon on top of that. Then you've got Ellie De La Cruz, and you've got a rotation that feels really, really exciting. Where I like everyone here. There's not a single pitcher where I'm like, this is a nightmare. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but we just called up Chase Burns, our number 2 draft pick from last season. Struck out the first 5 guys he faced, which hasn't been done since the beginning of the expansion era in the 60s. So he looks like he's going to be a good one. You look at that rotation and you go to the playoffs with Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, Nick Lodolo, and Chase Burns as your starting rotation. This team could be tough. The second half could be really tough.
Yeah. I think the Reds, man, not a bad division. Like I feel it, man. I absolutely feel it. And I feel like the second part of this question for the Padres perspective isn't nearly as fun because they always buy. Like that's just what they do. It's been a really tough stretch for them too. They've had 26 games in 27 days, only 1 day off, obviously. It's been tough. And they got really beat down by the D-backs. They got killed by the Dodgers, despite the sparks flying and everything. And that was a lot of fun to talk about, but they got killed. The Dodgers just completely owned us. Twice, right? 2 series like that, not back to back, but it was Dodgers, Diamondbacks, and Dodgers. And then, yes, you did get some wins, right? You did, but then you also got beat really bad by Seattle. You got beat a little bit before that. So it is a team that I could see. It just depends on how good they are. I think if they are really cooking, then I think we could see like that big swing. I think you could see if he's still available. I don't know if he's available. I can't tell Jaron Duran following the Rafael Devers trade, but if he is, I promise you Preller's thinking about it. And then guys like Luis Robert, like I just think that this team, for better or worse, is obsessed with the big flashy splash names. Sometimes it works. It does. Sometimes it works great. And sometimes it doesn't. But I think that if they are at their current pace, I think they do light buy. I think they just get someone who could just play left field and be decent. Get another DH in their platoon. That way, when Sheets can't hit against lefties, you've got someone else. Otherwise, that's what it is. And another thing that I think will play into this is the health of Michael King and Yu Darvish. I've been saying this on my show as well. The everydayers know it. if those the problem with the Padres is this: they're so cagey with injuries, and I never trust anything they say. You can ask any Padres fan this, and sometimes we're being melodramatic, and then the guy will be back in a week. But there have been over the years, I'm talking back with the Mike Clevenger and the Nelson Lamet days, right? Like these two guys, I said, oh, they're getting scopes. Week later, Tommy John surgery for Mike Clevenger, right? So this is a team that has been very weird with injuries. So if we're not being told fully, and if the Padres secretly know, oh, Michael King's going to be out for a while, or oh, Yu Darvish is not going to be healthy, then that will be really telling, and I think also impact their deadline.
I'm chuckling because you're talking to a guy that covers a team that had a manager look into the camera and say Matt McLain is day to day, and they come out 2 days later with an update that is Matt McLain just had surgery in Los Angeles and will be out the entire year.
I remember this because I had him on my fantasy team.
I am. You're preaching to the choir on not trusting the medical diagnoses, but I do want you to talk about two guys for me, because these two guys, they just impress the hell out of me every time I watch them play, and that's Manny Machado and Tatis Jr. You look at these guys right now.
About them, yeah.
Manny is a 135 OPS plus right now. Tatis 123. You know, they've combined for 28 home runs in the front half of this season, and they're combined 6.3 in WAR right now. Those two are a pretty dramatic 1-2 punch to have in a lineup.
Yeah, man. And look, and once Jackson Merrill gets going too, they might have a little bit of a trinity going on. Look, great way to end the show. Manny Machado, I'll put it like this. Looked like we've been following baseball for a long time. When you're in your 30s and you start seeing, oh no, they weren't very good last year, you prepare for the worst, which is when guys just fall off and they're not the same anymore. The difference is that Manny Machado was hurt last year and he had to get this surgery. So for the first month of the season, he was really, really bad. And then the rest of the year, he was very quietly awesome. And this year, he's been by far their best offensive player. He got unlucky. Right, he's been getting unlucky in some regards. He actually should probably have more home runs than he's had already, but he's been a stud, making some flashy plays at third base as always too. And then Tatis, a little bit trickier. He's definitely back to a degree, but he's been hitting the ball into the ground a lot more than usual, and he had a really, really bad follow-up month after looking like straight up the MVP, right? Like in the month of to start the season, Tatis just straight up looked like the MVP. And I think that there was a bunch of different things that happened. It looks like he was in his head a little bit, and he's been better. But it's still like I want to see it a little bit more, but he's been hitting the ball into the air again. He's still got that 261 average. That's still fine. But he did have a bad stretch. In fact, he had an OPS in, in May of 626. So far through June, 744. So he looks back, a lot more patient, putting the ball in the air, but he looks great. And it wouldn't surprise me because the other thing is this, he's been playing amazing defense. So he's still absolutely an MVP contender. If you want to shout out our people over at FanDuel, everybody go check them out. If you want to take a shot at Tatis, the odds might be a little bit less down after that bad month. But Steven, this has been a blast. I can't wait for the series this weekend. I can't wait for every series, but the Reds are just a fun team to play. One of the OGs, of course. So everybody go check out Locked On Reds and Steven, of course. And until next time, everybody, this has been the Locked On Padres and Locked On Reds crossover extravaganza. Until Monday's episode for both of us, stay safe and, of course, stay faithful, my Friar Faithful homies, and stay, what's a good C word for the Reds? Or an R word, whichever one. Stay radical, my Reds?
Stay rowdy. Just stay rowdy, baby.
Stay rowdy, baby. I love it. Amen, brother. Until next time, everybody, take care.